Welcome to the Apartment Investor Pro podcast, where we talk about how to be a more successful multifamily investor with a focus on using technology to boost your business. And now your host, Todd Heitner.
Welcome to the Apartment Investor Pro podcast. Today my guest is Adam Adams, and we'll be talking about how to raise money for multifamily property investing. Adam is partnered on lots of multifamily syndications with thousands of doors. Adam has educated thousands of investors through conferences, radio and podcast interviews, his coaching program, and his meetup group. Adam has successfully raised millions of dollars from private investors, so I'm excited to bring him on today to share his secrets for how to raise money. In this episode, you'll learn exactly how to get cash committed before you have a deal lined up. Adam will share the 3 capital raising steps to take right now if you've tapped out your personal network. Plus, learn how to avoid the mistakes that Adam made and what he'd do differently if he had to do it all over again. So let's get started. Adam, thanks so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it.
And I appreciate you having me. Sorry to cut you off.
That's right.
Whoops.
Yeah, no. So we'll be talking about raising money for apartment investing today, and that's something I know you have a lot of experience with. So I wanted to have you on to talk about that. So could you tell us a little bit about your experience, like how you got into that and how it went for you?
Yeah, the first time I raised money was on my second ever real estate transaction. It was a multifamily deal, and it was because I couldn't qualify for a loan. I ended up needing I don't remember if it was 365 or 385, but it was right around that 375,000 mark. And I reached out to a friend and ended up somebody that I had worked with. And so that was the first time I ever raised money. He actually went, the way that we did it is he purchased the triplex outright, and then he lent. I became the owner of the apartment, and he ended up making a note to me that I would just pay every month. So that's like the really back in the very first experience. And once I did that, I ended up closing on about $10 million of apartments after that. And actually apartments as well as some of our flips, even back in the day, and tax deeds. I ended up doing about $10 million of real estate, and I had never put any of my own money in it. So I started the Creative Real Estate Podcast, just to kind of teach other people how to buy real estate kind of creatively, how to work out transactions. So of course I learned a lot since 2008 when I closed on that first triplex through to now, and made a lot of changes recently. Over the last 3 or 4 years, we've been just about 3.5 years we've been just syndicating apartments. So we've closed on just a few buildings, but they're big buildings, so it puts you at a lot of doors. But we've just closed on a few buildings, and all the money's been syndicated, which means we've attracted the capital, we've raised the capital, and we manage our investors while we go. And lately, I've been trying to help other people to be able to attract more capital through branding and systems and even some psychology.
So if you were starting out all over again now, is there anything you would do differently from what you did before?
Yeah, definitely. The main thing that I would have done differently is I would have made sure that I had a property management company is number one, because I self-managed that first triplex, and it wasn't easy. And I made even some mistakes that a property management company wouldn't have made, because it was really just my first deal. Other things that I would have done is just to kind of sum it up though, because it comes down to hiring a property manager and hiring attorneys for the right contracts. That's really the main thing that I did. But I guess the mindset that I had was that I needed to keep the most amount of money to myself, that I could wear more hats. And I ended up, because I made those decisions, it ended up biting me in the butt. And so if I were to do it all over again, I definitely would have found a way to have an attorney draft the perfect contract, hired a property management company who was professional, who had been doing this for a long time, who knew how to evict, who knew how to. I just had a soft heart, right? When people said they couldn't pay, and I told you I kind of bought this in '08. So there was some people that couldn't pay in 2009 and 2010, and I wasn't the type of person that was willing to go off of the rules of you just have to pay or you're gone. I had like this really soft heart, and if I would have hired it out, I definitely would have had the better people. The only other thing that I would say that I would do differently, because it relates to raising money, is knowing what I know now, I probably wouldn't have started so small. I probably wouldn't have done a triplex for my first apartment. I probably just would have found a way to go into 100 unit right off the bat, because they're safer and they have a better, they will do better in a downturn than a triplex. So I probably just would have went bigger, and I probably would have learned that I need to raise the money before I find the deal, rather than finding the deal first and then like assuming that everybody's right when they say, if you find a good deal, the money automatically comes. Well, I know too many people that have lost deals, and I even have been stressed out a few times when I found the deal first and didn't have the money lined up. So that's another thing that I would definitely do differently. I would go bigger. I would have the money lined up, and I would probably go straight into syndications instead of doing like the one-off type things with one investor. So there's a few things that I definitely do differently.
So, well, with that deal that you did, you said that you felt like it was safer than to go with a bigger deal because, so like when the market turns, those tend to hold their value, I guess. Is that kind of what you meant with that? Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of people listening, that they know that in 2008, 9, 10, 11, they may have personally went through a foreclosure. But if they didn't, they at least know somebody personally who was struggling to pay their mortgage during that downturn. And actually, the larger deals were better than 6 times less likely to go through a default. And it's really just because the way that they're underwritten. The larger deals are underwritten with heavy scrutiny, and the lender never wants to put money out. So they do something that when they're doing all the underwriting, the banks do. They go off this thing called a DSCR, debt service coverage ratio. It basically means that they need to see that there's a history of it making a certain amount of money, usually 125%, normally 125% of what the mortgage would cost you. So even in a downturn, if you lose 10%, you're still going to be able to pay the mortgage. So based on that, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac loans in 2008, 9, 10, 11, they had less than a 1% default rate. While we had a lot of friends that were losing their houses, these larger apartments had less than a 1% default rate. That's kind of what I mean.
Okay. And you mentioned like raising money first before finding the deal. That seems like it could be challenging though too, because people want to know what they're investing in. So do you just get sort of a soft commitment, like if I find this criteria, or how do you?
Yeah. So the way that I help people to do that is I give them this thing called a sample deal package. It's like if you've never done a deal ever, then you want to download one of these sample deal packages for free. You want to have one. The thing about the sample deal package is it allows you to do a few things, and this is how to actually start getting those soft commitments. The sample deal package allows you to sit down at lunch and give somebody something tangible. So a lot of people find value in things that are tangible. And when it's not tangible, there's a lot of confusion in their mind. And so the passive investor who's confused, they always say this in sales and marketing: the confused mind says no. It's an automatic no if you don't know what you're doing, if you're nervous about it. And so when you hand somebody something, not only do they have something tangible, which makes them feel like there's value, but they also have the information where they can see it. Because a lot of people are visual. And even if they're auditory listeners or tangible listeners or whatever, if you can say it while they touch it and they see it, at the same time, they're more likely to have that information stick. And so when they go maybe home to their spouse, which usually will happen, you might sit down with one of the members, and they'll usually talk to their spouse. And if they do that and they can't really comprehend everything, the spouse is generally going to say, no, that sounds risky. Let's just keep our money in the stock market. And so this allows you to kind of go through a sample deal, like a pretend deal, an idea of the type of deal that you might close. And like the listener could use my sample deal package, which I only have 5 pages. A real deal package is a lot longer, but this is the meat of it. It's the 5 pages. And we don't use words like IRR, because when they get home to their spouse and their spouse is like, explain IRR to me, and they can't because they're not engineers or they don't have a ton of experience, the wife is going to say, no, if you don't even know what this means, we're not going to do it. So like in the sample deal package, we clean it up, we make it shorter than a real deal package, and we don't use confusing things. We want it to be something that they can take home to their spouse, and it'll say something on there like average annual return. Average annual return is fairly obvious to most of us, but IRR is like, well, what you do is you kind of like do this, and once you start kind of confusing people, they're not going to do it. So the sample deal package helps, because while you're sitting there with this package, you can point to it and you can say, if I have a deal that looks a lot like this, would you want to be a part of it? And it's so simplified for them. They're probably going to say yes. And if they do, just let them know this is the trick. You say something like, when we do these deals, they generally go pretty fast. And so oftentimes we're only raising maybe $1 million. That only leaves us room for 10 or 15 investors. And a lot of times that all gets closed out in a few days, or at max a couple of weeks. So if you want to be involved, let me know now, and I will save your spot. I always say, I will save your spot, because they have now ownership of that spot. And it also helps them feel more committed, because they don't want to give their spot to someone else. That's their spot. They own it. It's human psychology. They don't want to lose it. And now they feel also a little bit kind of connected. They have agreed to something. And I always tell clients, like, double the amount that you think you really need to have. So if you're going to close on like a $4 million property that you are going to maybe have to raise about $1 million, I want you to have $2 million just in soft commitments, where you're going with this sample deal package, showing people kind of what it might look like when you close, and asking them if they'd be able to move within 2 weeks if you end up having one, and how much they would want to put to it. And then you give them the paperwork. A couple things to avoid. Is, number one, not to overinflate your return on investment. What ends up happening is some people, they want a 6% return. I actually have a couple of passive investors that invest in my company. They just say, hey, Adam, I don't have a $50,000 amount for your next deal, which I think is your minimum, but I'd love to invest somehow. What can I do? And I always say, if I know them, right? Mm-hmm. If you want to invest in the company, I can give you a reasonable rate. It's not going to be attached to a property, but I can show you the money that I've made over the last little while, and I can show you that I have the competency and the ability to pay you back if you'd like to. And they often say, that sounds great. I'd love to be a part of that. And then they say, what interest rate will you pay? And I say, I'm open-minded. I want to make sure that it's fair for you. I know that the stock market is, not doing so hot right now. And I know that mortgage rates are in the 2s and 3s right now. So whatever you think is fair. So this is like a trick for other people that are listening. You start by like saying stocks aren't doing great. And what if they're not? Don't lie and say they're not if they are doing great. But when they're not, you just say it looks like stocks are, not doing so well right now, and interest rates are at an all-time low, 2 to 3%. You just tell me what you think is fair, and if I can do it, I will. And you know, it's really interesting. I've been getting 5 or 6% pretty often. And if you do this when you're talking to people, and you say, yes, I can do a 6% preferred return, or great, I'm glad that you're at that 6%. We actually are offering an 8% preferred return. If you go straight to the actual like 19% that you're thinking of, they're gonna be like, nope, too risky.
Yeah.
And again, when they go to their spouse, they're gonna basically be unable to invest in your deal. So that's just a hack. Is I always ask them what they want, and then if they're asking for lower amounts, I don't even talk about the whole IRR. Well, actually, I don't say IRR at all. I don't even talk about the whole annualized return. I really just talk about, okay, we have great. You said 6%. That's great, because we actually have a 6% preferred return. Let me show you what that means. This just means it's not a guaranteed 100% guaranteed return or anything like that. It just means that if we make enough money in the deal during that quarter, we're going to give you the first 6%, and then we'll split the rest. And I say we usually make more than that, and so we're usually just fine. But you will get the first 6%, and if we're unable to pay it that quarter, but we can the next quarter, we actually catch you up. So that's what a preferred return means. And I just kind of go through that. And all I talk about is a preferred return. I'm not trying to go to the 19, 20% IRRs, that 16% IRRs that everybody's talking about, because if they're asking for 6, that's going to scare them.
Right. Yeah. It sounds maybe too good to be true, and you said too risky. So, okay. Yeah. Awesome. Great tips. So, could you maybe walk us through a sample deal then? Like how that would go, like how much money you might need to raise on, say a property that costs $1 million, for example.
Perfect. Okay. So I'm not going to use a property that costs 1 million, because I have this feeling that we need to make sure that the loans that we use are what they call non-recourse loans. And if you're buying something where the loan itself is under $1 million, it's really difficult to get non-recourse debt. And the difference between recourse and non-recourse is basically, recourse means they go after the property, and then if they didn't get enough money, then they go after you personally. You're basically doing a personal guarantee on the loan. And a non-recourse means that their only recourse is the property only. They can't come after you for anything. So I just think it's smart to go all non-recourse debt, which basically means that you're having to buy something that's at least 1.5 million at least, so that the debt is that million or more. So we'll just maybe say 2 million, because that's easy to go with. Usually the amount that you have to raise, even if you get a 80-20 loan, a lot of people are getting 80-20 loans, and some are getting 70-30 loans. Okay, 70% the bank pays and you do the other 30%. So if you had an 80-20 loan, here's what you have to raise on top of it. They want you to have a year and a half. They want you to have like 12 to 15 months of reserves of all of your fees and payments and loan and just every expense that you would have to pay. They want you to just keep that in reserves to keep them protected. That's another reason why we're probably not going to see very many foreclosures in these large multifamily, because the banks are smart. So you are going to have to raise that, and you're going to have to raise the down payment 20 or 30%. And you're also going to have to raise another couple of things. Here's the 3 things. One is all of your CapEx. That's everything that you're going to have to do to the property in the beginning. So you might be replacing windows or the roof or the re-landscaping. So that could be hundreds of thousands of dollars, tens of thousands, or even $1 million plus. So you got to just remember all of that stuff. The second thing you have to raise up front, besides the prepayments on the mortgage, is you're going to have to be able to pay the utility deposit, which means that because the LLC that you just started, the brand new LLC, they don't have, there's no history saying that you're been in business for a long time, because you generally, when you're syndicating, you start a new one. So the utility company wants you to pay a big deposit. So you got to raise that also. And the third major thing that you got to raise besides CapEx and the utility deposit is something for the insurance. So you actually, with these larger deals, they ask you to have prepaid insurance. So like if you buy a house, you might sometimes have to pay 3 months of insurance, but most of the time you just have a monthly insurance payment, but not with these larger deals. So what I'm saying is, if the range is that you're doing an 80-20 loan, you're probably going to have to raise at least 30%, which is an extra 10%. And that also includes an acquisition fee. So most of us take an acquisition fee when we close on it, because it's so much work to kind of move them through the pipeline. And so the acquisition fee might be like 3%, but you raise that up front. I guess that's the fourth thing that you need to raise on CapEx and everything, is an acquisition fee. So you're going to raise at least 35% on a 20% down. And if it's a 30% down payment on a 70-30 loan, then you're probably going to raise pretty close to about half of the purchase price is what you're going to have to raise up front. So on a $2 million property, you'll raise anywhere from I guess 600,000 up to about $1 million. That's kind of your average. And then once you know that you can raise like 2 million, or that you have pre-commitments of 2 million, you'll get the property under contract. Once it's under contract, you'll put down what's called an earnest money deposit, which is usually 1% of the purchase price. So on a $2 million project, that I think is $20,000, isn't it? Okay, the last one we did was $135,000, but that was like a $10 million property. So yeah, I think it's only 20 grand is what you'd have to put down. So then you also have the attorney's fees, which is usually about another 20 grand. It's 10 or 12 or 15 for the securities attorney, and then some more for contract attorneys and real estate attorneys. So you'll have to pay all this up front, the 20, and then the other 20-ish in legal fees. And then they'll create the PPM, which is it's a private placement memorandum, almost like going public with your company, but you're going private with your company. So this allows you to legally raise the money. So we get this private placement memorandum. Then the next step is to host webinars. So we start talking with our investors, calling our investors, hosting webinars for our investors, answering questions, using a real deal package instead of the sample deal package. And then we start getting commitments for the actual deal. Then you put all of the money, we call it EBOP. EBOP stands for entity, bank account, operating agreement, and PPM. So those are the four things you need to be doing is EBOP. If you write it down, it's a cool way to remember it. But they will put their money, meaning these are your passive investors, they're going to put the money directly into an escrow account. This is going to be the bank account for the entity that you're creating. And you don't touch that money for anything except for closing on the project. You'll raise everything, including your acquisition fee goes into this bank, and on the day that you close, it all gets dispersed. So you usually get all of your fees back, like the 20 grand that I paid on this $2 million property, the 20 grand that I did my down payment, I get it back. The 20 grand that I did for my legal fees, I get it back. Anything that I paid for all of my due diligence, I get it back. My flights, I get it back. Plus, I get an acquisition fee. So it's usually like 3%. So that's going to be about $60,000 that my company will make. And then you also do the down payment. You also put money in escrow. You also are paying the utility deposit. You're paying the prepaid insurance. You have an account where you have 15 months of mortgage. All of that is set up. And now you start managing the property. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Lots of things to think about, that if you hadn't gone through this process before might seem, a little overwhelming if you just jump into it and didn't realize all that's there. So yeah, great. So for somebody maybe working on their first deal, do you have any strategies that would work for them for raising money for their first deal, since they don't have that experience and track record to?
Yeah, definitely. So if you have a track record, you're going to actually use a past deal as your sample deal. But if you don't have a track record, you need to have just a sample deal that's a pretend deal and a type of deal that you're going to look for. So it's very essential that you have a sample deal. Another thing that I would say is really important is that you want to get educated. Somebody on your team, you've got to get educated. You've got to kind of know what you're doing, listen to some podcasts, and hopefully pay some type of education. I'm not saying you have to pay $100,000 or even $50,000, but you got to probably really do what you can to be the type of person that's going to be able to protect this money. You don't want to be completely lost, which comes to my next thing that you should do if you're brand new is I don't like seeing what's called the blind leading the blind. Somebody who's never, ever, ever syndicated, partnering with somebody else who's never, ever, ever syndicated. Neither of them really know what they're doing, but they're kind of like friends, or they might feel like they're the yin to the yang, and they might feel like they both are motivated. But when you have the blind leading the blind, you're really putting your passive investors' money at risk. So the suggestion that I would have for the new person is to actually, on your first one or two deals, at least the first deal for sure, but usually I like to recommend 2 deals in a row that you end up co-GPing with a team that's already in place. Somebody who's been asset managing for a long time, because that's the hardest part. It's not all about finding a deal and raising money. The hard part is the asset management. That's the tricky part, and that's where most of the money is lost or made. And if you're brand new and your teammate's brand new, it's going to be difficult. So instead of having the blind leading the blind, actually partner with somebody who's been there and done that before. The only other thing that I would suggest is try to get the money before you get the deal. As many people that will tell you, don't worry, the money just automatically comes. I hate those people. I'm against those people. I want to punch them in the face, right? Like that's not appropriate to be telling somebody who's new that the money just automatically follows. If nobody knows who you are, nobody's going to invest in your deal. You've got to start raising the money in the beginning so that you're prepared. Don't go ready, fire, aim, like they say. Go ready, aim, fire. Be prepared before you try to close. So that'd be the advice I would give to somebody new.
Let's take a moment to thank our sponsor. When we come back, Adam will share the 3 steps to keep raising capital after your personal network is tapped out. Plus, Adam shares his advice about whether you should go big or start small. So stay tuned. Do you need funding for your multifamily deals? Well, we've partnered with one of the biggest names in multifamily lending to help you get a loan for your next deal. Just go to apartmentinvestorpro.com/funding and fill out the short contact form, and our lending partner will get in touch with you. Again, that's apartmentinvestorpro.com/funding. And then what about somebody that does have maybe some experience, maybe they want to do bigger deals, they've tapped out their personal network and they want to kind of scale up. How can they expand their network and do that?
That's the main type of person that I work with. And so I love this question. So I usually work with people that have closed lots of deals, but now they feel like they're tapped out. Now all of these podcasters are coming out and getting noticed. And the passive investors are seeing the podcasters before they see this person who has a lot of experience. So what I would suggest is that you do these 3 things right away, because you're going to start not being able to raise money if you're not doing these 3 things. So for somebody who's got experience, they've closed a few deals, but they're starting to hit that limit, I want you to have a thought leadership platform. I want you to have some type of live event, and I want you to be active on social media. Regardless if you're afraid of it, regardless of if you're not comfortable with it, you got to find a way with you or your partner to get out in front of new investors. Because if a lot of people know who you are, you're much more likely to start raising more equity. And those other podcasters that are even brand new are starting to be able to raise more than you. So if you're experienced, you've been doing this for a while, I need you to get a thought leadership platform. Can I give them a few ideas of what that might be?
Yeah.
Okay. If we're running out of time, let me know and I won't.
No, go
So
for it.
as far as like the thought leadership ideas, you could write a book or an ebook, or you could host your own podcast or your YouTube channel, or you could write your own blog. And the last idea is to be the organizer of a Facebook group. That's what I mean by thought leadership. Somewhere where people can see what you're doing and start to gravitate toward you because you are a thought leader. You are adding value, and they will start looking at you and wanting to invest with you before they invest with other people that, even if they've done a lot of deals, but nobody really sees them. They're not in the limelight. It's harder to trust those people. So it's interesting how having a thought leadership platform really will help. So those are the 5 options for thought leadership. And I'm suggesting that you only do one. Don't do a bunch of them. It's not going to help you, and you're just going to be stressed. Just focus on one of those things that I shared. Write a book or do a podcast, just one. The second thing that I mentioned was your live events. And so I host conferences. We have 600 plus people that come to our conferences. I know you were a sponsor at our last conference, so you were there. There were 617 people at that conference in Denver. You don't have to get this crazy. You don't have to be hosting conferences. You don't have to have a meetup. You don't have to have workshops or boot camps or any type of big event. If you want, it could just be you and your partner. Like if you have a significant other, like you and your significant other could get together with a potential passive investor and their significant other. So that counts as a live event. So I gave you all the ideas of different kinds of live events you could host: meetup, boot camp, workshop, conference, or just dinner.
Yeah.
And then the third thing is what you do on social media. And a lot of people, they hear that and their guard comes up. Their hearts start to sink, their stomach sinks, and their hearts start to tense up. They're like, you're trying to tell me I got to be active on social media? Well, here's all I'm saying. Here's all I'm saying is I want you to make at least 3 posts a week. And you're all already saying, that sounds crazy, 3 posts a week. But at least 3 posts a week. I do more than that. And you'll only focus on one social media platform. You don't have to be an expert at all of it. Just focus on one. And Bigger Pockets counts, Facebook counts, LinkedIn counts, whatever social media platform you want to be on. Totally counts. Just focus on it heavily. And I'm not asking you to go crazy, like just, jamming and cramming information down people's throats or salesy things down people's throats. That's not what we're trying to talk about. I use the Gary Vaynerchuk model. He wrote this book called Jab, Jab, Right Hook. So you just kind of remember, originally when he wrote that, he wanted to publish it with a lot of jabs with the right hook because he feels like you need to give before you ask. His editors, his publisher made him take it down to just jab, jab, right hook. So just remember, you can jab as many times as you want. And the jabs are these things. You'll either talk about your family, your kids, your schooling, the wine that you love, the restaurant that you just went to, the traveling that you just did, the new car that you just bought, the old car that you're keeping on the road, whatever. You're going to talk about you, yourself, your family, and your hobbies. These are the jabs. The other idea for jabs is just adding value, just a total give. Nothing asking for, no call to action, no salesiness, but just, hey, I just learned this. I wanted to give it to you guys. I think this will help you. And then the right hook is the ask. So you might say something like, if you are looking to become a passive investor and you want to place your money into deals like this, we are open to bringing on a couple other passive investors, helping you through the process. And I just want you to go to my website and click the button, get on the list. I made it that easy on our website anyway. You go to realbluespruce.com, click the button, get on the list. Makes it simple, and it's right at the top. That's all we say to our past investors. But when you have that right hook after all the jabs, you give them the call to action. So they're basically saying, I can help you through this, and this is what you'll do to do it. And I love how simple and easy it is to give a call to action by saying, go to my website.com and click the button that just says get on the list. And then you tell the passive that it's that easy. You just say, it's that easy. Just click, get on the list. and you can start seeing our deals and we can start helping you through the process. That's
Yeah.
what I'd suggest.
Sounds good. It's like a low pressure thing. They can do it when they're ready. And it's, yeah. Is it maybe kind of on that note too, like some people feel a little uncomfortable asking for, with that call to action, asking people to invest. Do you have any advice about that? Anything to?
Yeah, it's all psychology, because if you're uncomfortable, what that probably means is that you don't feel like that what you're doing is the right thing. Honestly, if you feel that uncomfortable, then you're probably nervous that you're going to lose past investor money. You're very self-centered. So what a lot of people are like, they think something like, if I don't raise this money, then I can't close on my deal, and I'm going to be embarrassed, and I'm going to lose money, and and all of this I is really going to make it difficult for you to really realize what's actually happening here. You are doing something that those past investors need. They gotta diversify. They don't want all of their money in stocks. They're coming up to an age where they gotta make sure that they're diversifying in other assets. Some of them perform better than others. All of this kind of stuff needs to happen for them. They need you more than you need them. There's more passive investor money available than there is deals. 100% believe that, and you should too. There's more money than there is deals. If you're finding good deals and you aren't doing blind leading the blind, if you're partnering with the right people, then you're offering something that's incredible that they need. And so don't let yourself be nervous. Stop talking about yourself. Just realize how badly they need this, and that you're the type of person that has a service for them so that they can get some of their money into multifamily real estate or whatever kind of syndication you might be doing. So that's really what I would say is if you're having a hard time asking for money, you're probably just very self-centered, or you feel like you're going to lose the money. So if you listen to this whole episode, I think we've answered those questions on how to protect their money and how to know that you're not asking for money. You're actually offering a phenomenal opportunity for good people that need you.
Yeah. Awesome. So anything else you can think of then that our listeners should know about raising money?
Yeah. I'll leave them with a quick story
Sure.
about the apple tree. When everybody always talks about when's the best time to plant a fruit tree. And they always say the best time was like 30 years ago, but the next best time is right now. Some people, when they're thinking about raising money for real estate, we already talked about how important it is to go ready, aim, fire versus ready, fire, aim. And it comes with the apple tree, because you really need to grow and cultivate. You need to plant the seed. You need to water it. Later on, you need to prune it. And you need to watch this baby tree for a while, and it's going to get bigger on its own as you continue to nurture it. And there's going to come a day where you can pull as many apples as you want. You're actually going to have apples falling off the tree and rotting because you can't eat them fast enough. You're like, there's no way I could eat this many apples. And that's the way I look at raising money. Is the best time to start your thought leadership platform and to do those three things that I mentioned to you before: thought leadership, live events, and your social. The best time was a long, long time ago. The next best time is right now. And if you do it, there's going to come a day where you have so many apple trees, you can close on any deal that you ever need, and they're going to be replenishing themselves. But if you don't do it, you're going to come to a day where it's time to raise money, and you are behind the 8 ball trying to plant your tree and trying to harvest it all on the same day, and it's going to frustrate you and you might lose money. So
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, great analogy. So planning, nurturing, and then waiting, seeing the results down the road after you've put in the work. So yeah. That's great. Well, thanks so much. What's the best way for people to connect with you if they want to learn more about you or things you're doing?
I'll share adamadams.net. So at adams.net. That's my main hub and where you can find me and get a hold of me.
Okay, great. Well, thanks so much for coming on today. Really appreciate all your insight and expertise you shared with us. And Yeah, I appreciate that. So thanks so much. And
Thanks for having me.
yeah, hope you have a great day. Raising money for multifamily property investing can be one of the most overwhelming and stressful parts of your business. Where do I start? Who do I reach out to? And from there, the questions can keep piling up. That's why we've put together a free raising money toolkit for you. It contains each step of the process of raising money, from finding potential investors to polishing your pitch when you talk to them. Plus, I include some bonus resources and tips that you can read or listen to that will be of great help in raising money. Things like how to keep your investors happy so they'll invest with you again and again. Download it for free at apartmentinvestorpro.com/raising money. Again, that's apartmentinvestorpro.com/raising money. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Apartment Investor Pro podcast. Be sure to subscribe to get the latest episodes. Also, visit our website at apartmentinvestorpro.com and connect with us.